That survival myth is completely wrong and can get you killed. You can drink water from a cactus. Any liquid inside a cactus will be highly acidic and likely to cause nausea or diarrhea, further dehydrating you. Follow flying birds to find water. They can simply be flying to spend a night anywhere, so we can't rely on them. Fish are the ones you want to follow to find water. If you're in a hot area, don't ration your water. Drink when you feel thirsty and search for more water. The myth to be avoided is rationing your water. Don't ration. Ration sweat, not water. Thank you, USAF Survival School. At SERE School, they teach you to find shade and try to do as little as possible during the hotter times of the day. If you have to move, you do so when it cools off. Rationing your water doesn't help you. It will only dehydrate you and impair your judgment. Your brain needs water. Depriving yourself of proper hydration is the best way to kill yourself unintentionally. If you're in a tornado, open all of your windows to equalize the pressures inside to match the outside. If you're in a tornado, opening any window or door will create a wind tunnel that rips your entire roof off. If I recall correctly, it doesn't matter anyway. You waste time doing that when you need to get to the lowest part of a building and/or the innermost room. Cracks and small openings take care of air pressure as buildings aren't airtight. Overpasses are not safe places to shelter. In fact, they're more dangerous. They create wind tunnels. The average lead time for tornado warnings in the US is 9 minutes, but people still don't take them seriously. The most common refrain I've read from people who survived the Joplin tornado is that they didn't take the warning seriously. Even with a tornado watch, they didn't pay attention to the weather. Concerning frostbite, do not rub someone's frostbite skin or pour hot water on it to warm them up. Such measures will damage the skin even more severely. The fastest and safest method for warming up someone is direct animal heat, i.e. letting them put their frosty skin next to yours. Hey, if you can keep your digits by putting a cold hand on my belly, be my guest. I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I feel like in Boy Scouts they taught that the groin and armpits were good places to warm your hands in an emergency survival situation. That moss grows on the north side of the tree. It can grow all over the tree, so it's not a steadfast rule that you should make important decisions solely on. That bullcrap change your voicemail if you are lost PSA that was making the rounds over last year. You need a cell signal to change your voicemail. If you have a signal, then why wouldn't you just call for help? Moreover, it misses the most important thing about US cell phones and being lost. 911 will work on any cell tower regardless if it's in network, or even if you have an active phone plan or not. So in an emergency, always try dialing 911 regardless of whether your phone appears to have a signal or not. To the dozens of people who replied that you were supposed to change your voicemail before going out, this is still a bad idea. If you're lost or injured in the woods, your survival depends on being found quickly. Waiting for someone to get worried enough about you not coming back to try calling you is just going to waste precious time. It's much better to just tell your friends/family where you will be and set up a check-in time so they know you made it back safely. Split to cover more ground. That's a killer's wet dream. Most of the stuff Bear Grylls does, like eating raw meat, picking and eating fruit out of bear crap, or squeezing the juice out of elephant crap and drinking it. Not all of the stuff Bear Grylls does is a terrible idea. Staying in a nearby luxury hotel instead of roughing it in the wilderness, for example, by far his best survival tip. You cannot eat everything that an animal can eat. There are things animals can eat that humans find toxic, so eating everything you see animals eating can lead to you potentially eating deadly berries or mushrooms. You can go much longer without food than cramps and diarrhea from eating something you shouldn't have. Food is not at the top of the list in a survival scenario. Just because the water looks clean doesn't mean it is. You've got to boil it or distill it to have actually clean water. Or carry a modern filter like a Life Straw or Sawyer if you think there's even a remote chance you're going to be stranded with no potable water. I'll also add that drinking dirty water is always a better option than going without water. If you are dehydrated but don't have a way to sanitize your water, drink the water anyway. There's a chance it will make you sick or maybe even kill you in very rare cases, but dehydration will always kill you. The first mistake in the wilderness is to look for food and water first before having a shelter up to keep yourself dry and warm. Also, if you have to forage for food, avoid mushrooms entirely. The odds are so slim that you will find an edible kind that you're much better off looking for things like nuts, seeds, and berries. Some people say that herbivore animals are friendly and peaceful, so you are safe being around them. Seriously, everything from cows to deer can and will kill you if you make it angry. It is usually a good idea if you are in the wild to not get near any large wild animals, but herbivores can often be even more aggressive than predators. If a predator attacks you, you have a fairly good chance of scaring it off, especially if it's smaller than you because it's likely only looking for food. If an herbivore attacks you, you're fricked because it genuinely wants to kill you. Running in a zigzag to outrun an alligator. Alligators don't run for long distances, so this will probably just waste your energy. They can also climb some fences and trees as well. Just run straight. No question, just book it. The alligator will eventually decide it's had enough. How often do alligators even chase people anyway? Does this actually happen? Anyone else read these comments with intrigue, imagining yourself in the said situation only to remember you haven't left the house in a long time and likely will never find yourself in these scenarios? Because that's me. If a shark is coming after you, swim away. If a shark is coming toward you in the first place, it's most likely just curious and wants to check you out. Swimming away and thrashing about will further intrigue it to keep following you. Instead, redirect it by running your hand along its side and carefully positioning it to swim away from you. Side note, if one happens to bite you, poke or stab it in the eyes or pull on its gills instead of bopping it on the nose. Gills and eyes are far more sensitive than a shark's nose. Pulling out something that is impaling you. My cousin has horrible luck. One time, when we were playing in the front yard, he went barefoot and ended up stepping on a knife someone has lost during the 4th of July and went through the lawnmower so the blade was sticking straight up. It was like 2 inches or so in his foot, and he was hopping around and screaming, and he reached down to pull it out. And like arteries and bleeding to death flashed through my mind, so I body slammed him to the ground and rolled him onto his back, then pinned him with his injured foot on my shoulder and both my legs wrapped around his to keep him from getting loose while he bled into my hair and down my back. My mom came running out a minute later, and she called 911. The knife was less than an inch from an artery in his foot. If he'd pulled on it like he wanted to, it probably would have killed him before we could get him to help. These days, I'm paranoid about pulling out splinters. Almost anything related to avalanches. Here are a few popular and false myths. That they strike at random. Most avalanches that injure or kill people are caused by those people, and they always show signs of instability if you are paying attention. The problem is that there are lots of false positives, where the signs are there, the instability is there, but people just don't quite manage to trigger them. That you should be quiet to be safe from avalanches because they are caused by sound. Sound does not trigger avalanches. Even very loud sounds are nowhere near enough. Avalanche control is done with howitzers and dynamite charges. That you can get out of the way. Well, sure, of course sometimes it's possible, but they can travel up to 60 miles per hour, and they can let loose across an entire slope all at once. By the time it slides, you are likely in it, and it's inescapable. That you can save yourself by swimming. Maybe for very small ones, but usually you're just being thrashed. I've heard it compared to being in a side-loading washing machine. That you can spit to tell which direction is up. You won't be able to see anything useful. And, gravity still works, but it's irrelevant because that relies on the next myth. That you can dig yourself out. Even if you are inches below the surface, it's very unlikely. The snow sets up very hard, very fast, as though you got caught up in a snowplow clearing a parking lot after a big snowstorm. People caught in avalanches report not being able to move their fingers. Along with that are all the normal problems people have with low probability, high consequence risks. The "it won't happen to me" stuff, but that's not so much an issue of myths as poor judgment due to things like familiarity with a slope, desire to be accepted by a social group by skiing that rad backcountry line, feeling committed because you came all this way, deferring to someone you perceive as an expert, desire to get the first tracks after a storm, social proof, where you see others doing it so it must be safe, etc. Reading this made me panic, thinking of being trapped, probably upside down in the snow and not being able to even use my fingers to dig myself out. So how do you survive? Or do you just not? I am by no means an expert. The more you learn about snow science, the more you realize you don't know. But I'm passionate about helping people stay safe out there. If you're in Canada, check out avalanche.ca for training courses and a wealth of resources. I believe in the US, most mountainous states have their own similar avalanche safety organizations as well. For people who choose to recreate in avalanche terrain, if they are smart, they are traveling with at least one other person, and everyone in the party is wearing a transceiver and carrying a portable shovel and probe, and everyone should have proper training on how to use these tools. The transceiver is used to approximate the buried person's location under the snow based on the signal their device is emitting. Then the probe, 2.7 to 3 meters long skinny pole, is plunged strategically into the snow around your closest signal. When you feel your probe strike your friend's body, time to dig. Avalanche debris is heavy, so there is a strategy to this as well, and it's really nice to have at least one other person to speed things up. Hopefully, you dig out your friend before they've been without air long enough to do serious damage. If you're out without a transceiver and you get buried deep enough that no one sees a hand or other body part sticking out above the snow, so they don't know where to look, you will suffocate. A search and rescue org might come with an avalanche rescue dog, but that takes time, and more often than not, it becomes a body recovery mission. The best way to avoid these scenarios is to avoid avalanche terrain if you're not trained, or if you choose to recreate there for ski touring or snowmobiling, practice companion rescue often. Take avalanche safety courses and make conservative terrain choices based on avalanche hazard ratings. Source: I do avalanche control work at a ski resort and backcountry ski recreationally in avalanche terrain. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. If lightning has found a path that it likes to the ground, it's extremely likely to strike there multiple times. That's why lightning rods work. That you can give somebody CPR and they'll be fine moments later like nothing happened. Am a medic. Can confirm. Most likely, they will die. A lot of people are commenting that someone is already dead if we're doing CPR, but that depends on your definition of dead. The line is blurred more and more. Not every cardiac arrest has no rhythm. Some have one, but they're not useful for pumping blood. Some have none at all. Is brain death dead? Then no, not all cardiac arrests are dead. Is it when the heart ceases to beat effectively? Then yes, they all are. LEO here. When I signed up, I learned 2 things about CPR I didn't know before. 1. Good CPR will break your ribs. 2. CPR is mostly for keeping the blood flowing around your organs and stuff until you get to a hospital. Full resuscitation rarely ever happens from just CPR. You don't have to wait 24 hours to report somebody as missing to the police. My brother was going through a rough time and I hadn't seen him for a day. The local cops wouldn't take the report. He hasn't been missing long enough. I'd like you to perform a safety check on him then. Also, I hope your bro is okay. Drinking water from a cactus. If absolutely needed for survival, you could get some water out of a fishhook barrel cactus, but only in limited amounts. Most cactuses have various acids and other fun things in the water that will make you crap yourself to death. Dehydration in the desert isn't a laughing matter, and you don't want to lose the precious bit of water left in your body to the desert ground. Drinking alcohol when you are freezing will keep you warm, but it won't. It will bring on hypothermia much sooner. The desert is hot, and little clothing is best. Cover up during both the day and the night. The sun will burn you and dehydrate you very quickly. During the night, it's really common for people to die of hypothermia because the temperature drops so fast. And honestly, living here during the winter, it gets to the low 20s pretty often, and the wind is awful. I thought I might die when visiting Arizona. We had sub-zero sleeping bags and I still couldn't fall asleep. I was so cold, it was the coldest I had ever been, and it was awful and unexpected to that degree. I knew it would be cold. I didn't know I would feel that cold. 2 of us got into a sleeping bag together inside another sleeping bag. Miserable, and gave me a much better appreciation for how much shelter you actually need when crap hits the fan. Without gear, I can't imagine making it through the night. You can survive a moose attack. That's it. That's the myth, because no, you can't. A lot of people just think of moose as deer with different horns that are marginally bigger. In reality, moose are manic leviathans and will absolutely mess you up. During the mating season, they'll charge at trains on the tracks. If your plane is crashing, an inflatable raft makes a terrible parachute. Drinking your own piss. People who survive do so despite drinking the wee. But it sure is fun though. Stand in a doorway in an earthquake. Live in an earthquake-prone area. the doorway will collapse. You'd have better luck with the coffee table. If a nuclear bomb is exploding in your general vicinity, hiding in a refrigerator will not save you. Hiding in water might though. Jump in a lake. It has to be a big lake though. Jumping in a small one will just end up boiling you instead of frying you. Hit a snake fast with a shovel or kill it by snapping it. If it bites you, suck the poison out or use a tourniquet. No. Australians are constantly bewildered by every other country's madcap insanity around this. We live with deadly snakes. Why do people do these things? 1. Do not mess with the snake. Just leave it bloody alone. Magically, you don't get bitten. 2. If you messed with the snake, see point 1, we told you not to mess with it, call an ambulance. Use a broad pressure bandage to immobilize the whole limb. Never ever tourniquet a snake bite. You are reducing the natural lymph movement through broadly spread pressure, not trying to give them gangrene. The victim must not move unless being carried. Don't touch your mouth to the wound. Don't wash it, just freaking stop. Immobilize, write the time of the bite and circle the location on outside of the bandage and wait for professional help. If you have to choose between walking or waiting if you are a long way from help, you wait. You are more likely to survive by not moving at all. Please, for the love of God, just leave it alone. We have vastly more venomous snakes than a mere rattler, and we die vastly less often because we do not mess with the spicy danger noodle. Little random, but I learned a thing or two while doing fieldwork in Tanzania. If you're bitten by a venomous animal in a country with a subpar medical system, you might be tempted to evacuate somewhere with a better medical system. Unless there is zero medical help available where you are, this is a bad idea for a couple of reasons. 1. Evacuating takes a while and you could very much be dead by then. And 2. Hospitals in parts of the world with very few venomous animals do not stock antivenom generally. There was a case of a Canadian student who almost died because she was bitten by a snake in Thailand and returned to Canada for treatment. Unsurprisingly, Canadian hospitals do not stock Malaysian pit viper antivenom. You're better off taking your chances at whatever sketchy medical center is nearby. Or if you're doing something where you likely are to be bitten, carry your own antivenom. Was in remote Colombia visiting a friend's farm. Friend got bit by a pit viper. Sketchy local hospital was actually carrying loads of antivenom because they see bites so often. He survived with no permanent damage. Myth: the rubber tires on a vehicle will insulate you from the ground and protect you from lightning. Lightning doesn't stop for 2 inches of rubber, though the car will act like a Faraday cage and protect you from the electrical current unless you're in a convertible, a motorbike, or any other vehicle that doesn't cover you in all directions. Also, don't lie down on the ground during a thunderstorm. You increase the risk of being shocked by a ground current, which can be pretty dangerous. Another thing, don't take shelter under a tree or a gazebo. They can explode or light on fire when struck. That you'll be totally safe if you only eat plants or fungi that you recognize. Hemlock looks a lot like wild parsnips. Basically, all wild almonds will kill you if you eat more than one. And of course, there's the Chris McCandless potato seed thing. Wait, what? Wild almonds will kill you? And what is this potato seed thing you speak of? Wild almonds have a whole bunch of cyanide in them, so having even a handful could kill you. Regular almonds also contain a trace amount of cyanide, but not nearly enough to kill you. Fun fact, apple seeds also have cyanide in them. Don't know if it's a myth, but I remember Bear Grylls had no qualms about getting wet in his show, but getting wet is extremely bad in survival situations in most climates. If I recall, he once stripped down naked to demonstrate how to cross an icy river, which is more or less smart. If you are in a situation where you absolutely have to cross the icy river, doing it naked while keeping the clothes dry is a good plan. However, in what kind of situation would you need to be to cross the river? Either follow it downstream or try to find a ford. Dude, I've been waiting to rant about this. Hopefully now I can help someone instead of just annoy my friends. It's a popular belief to either pull off a leech once it's bitten you or to pour salt on it so it lets go. Never do this. Pulling them off sounds as dangerous as it is, but pouring salt on them is even worse. Their entire body is a mucous membrane, aka salt on it hurts. It causes them to projectile vomit before they let go, and your blood, any parasites or diseases they have, along with any other human or animal blood in their tummy, immediately goes back into your bloodstream. And just like pulling them off, it can also cause them to lose teeth, which can also get into your bloodstream and kill you. It sounds terrifying and faint-inducing, but truly the best way to remove a wild leech safely is to let nature take its course. Once its belly is full, it'll let go, and no teeth or any other yucky stuff will be in your blood. I worked in a rainforest for a bit, and leeches were a terrible thing. Whilst this advice is great, it's really hard to stick to, especially if you have 4 or 5 on you at once. Watching them get happily engorged on your very lifeblood triggers some really visceral emotions. It was also particularly bad if they managed to slip through the weave of your sock whilst emaciated. They'd get too fat to get back out, and would get mangled in your boot as you walked. When you took your sock off, your foot would just be covered in blood and shredded leech. Yes, this is a very good point. When there's that many on you, your survival instinct is likely to kick in, and removing them is very likely. Hopefully you don't get an infection or anything worse. Though if there's just 1 or 2 on you, you have more of a choice. That sounds awful though, I couldn't imagine. Not so much a myth, but people often think that getting to safety or getting out of a vehicle or traffic after a crash is a good idea. If you're ever involved in a severe wreck and you suffer any damage to your body, it's very important not to move. If you can do so, to call 911. Yeah, but as far as moving any limb, with the exception of calling medical emergency personnel or readjusting your body to get more comfortable, don't do any of that. You can cause broken bones you may have suffered to start cutting or puncturing your skin or insides, which could cause you to start bleeding internally. Note that I said severe. Of course, if your car is on fire, get out. But if you're involved in something minor, don't just sit in traffic if it's possible to drive out of the way. Scrolling through these comments, knowing full well that my ass isn't going outside city limits anytime in the next decade. Urban survival: if you hear shots, go home. If you hear yelling, ignore it and go home. If someone is following you, don't go home. Check the license plate against your app info and ask the name of your driver if you're using Uber/Lyft. Walk purposefully with your head up. Act like you belong. If you saw something, know the hell you didn't. Don't wear jewelry or carry expensive accessories that say "mug me." Keep your money in 2 places. One, to quickly surrender it when demanded, and the other to get you a safe ride to a safer place. If a limb is dislocated, pop it back in. Don't. Just don't. The doctors take extreme care and use crazy amounts of drugs when doing this in the hospital, and they have a good reason to do that. If anything is caught, it will be crushed. And if a blood vessel or nerve gets caught, then the limb will probably need to be amputated. This is definitely true for whole limbs, arms and legs, aka shoulders, elbows, and hips, but I would add that smaller dislocations like fingers, toes, or kneecaps can be put back. Mine have dislocated multiple times, and I've pulled them back into place myself due to knee-jerk reaction, although I've gone to the hospital after to make sure nothing broke. The longer they stay off place, the worse the swelling and therefore relocating will be. The problem there is that you need to be sure nothing is broken. Popping a dislocated toe back in might be relatively easy. Trying to shove a broken toe into a different position is a really bad idea. Always assess how long it would take for help to arrive and how badly you need to use said extremity. And don't touch it unless you're relatively sure that you can just yank it back in. Nothing prepared me for my first knee dislocation. You always hear about it from people who have chronic issues with that and basically no-sell it. They don't tell you how freaking horrible and painful your first one feels. Not a myth, but I feel there is too little awareness about using wet rocks near fire, as they can potentially explode and cause serious damage. Example: do not use river rock as a cooking surface between direct fire and your food. It's nature's version of a pressure cooker with a loose old gasket. Drinking alcohol when you are stuck in extreme cold. Alcohol dilates blood vessels and opens the pores in your skin, allowing body heat to escape. You feel hotter because your skin is warm, but your core body temperature is dropping. When you're a girl and you're running away from the killer through the woods, don't constantly look in the opposite direction that you're running. This will definitely lead you to tripping and falling. If you do trip and fall, don't lay there crying and wiping the hair out of your face. This will definitely give the killer the opportunity to catch up to you. Similarly, when running away from a car or a giant wheel, don't run the direction the pursuer is traveling. This will definitely keep you in the direct path of the pursuer. Instead, veer to either the right or the left of the path of the pursuer. If you are the beautiful wife and children of a protagonist, do not sit around the breakfast table on a lovely sunny morning talking about how happy you are together, and this is key to any middle school or high school loved ones. Do not make eye-rolling and/or snarky remarks about what a doofus your dad is. This will definitely lead to your family being either killed or kidnapped that same day. Always stay with your car. It's better for searchers to do that if there's a search underway, but if there is no search and you can walk out, then do that. The ducks at the park are not free. You will go to jail. That a restraining order will protect you. You have to take action beyond a restraining order. If they work, one wasn't truly needed. If they don't, it's mainly a paper trail for when something does happen. Punching the biggest guy in prison. No, what you want to do is walk up and kiss him on the lips. Assert dominance. Don't drink pee. It will dehydrate you more than it will provide water. It'd be more fun to post ones that are real but surreal, like woodlice. Roly-polies or slaters, some places call them, are pretty nutritious and easily cooked in a pinch. Or, if you have to resort to cannibalism, eat the hands and feet first. Keeps the rest fresher. Most people are extremely bad at trying to identify edible plants. Even if you have a guide with you, it's very easy to misidentify plants. Get someone in a hot bath when they're suffering through hypothermia. In reality, the sudden temperature change can cause cardiac arrest. Follow a stream to find your way down the mountain, or running water leads to civilization. In my region, this is likely to lead you to dead ends, such as steep waterfalls and sheer cliffs. People wind up trapped when they climb down a slope, hit a dead end, and then realize it's too steep or slippery to backtrack. Getting bit by a radioactive spider in a metropolitan city can actually cause necrosis and radiation poisoning instead of giving you spider-like abilities, making you more popular with women and forcing you to conceal your true identity. Cotton socks. Wool socks stay warm even when wet. One good pair of wool socks is a lifesaver. Thanks for watching until the end. What's a life-saving tip that's actually a myth that you'd like to correct? Please write it in the comments below so that we can read it. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time!